Your one click on the subscribe button makes a huge difference. Thank you for your kind support.
In the heart of New York City lives Iris, a solitary writer whose ordered existence is thrown into disarray when her closest friend and mentor, Walter, takes his own life. The aftermath of this tragedy brings an unexpected companion into Iris's life, Apollo, Walter's imposing Great Dane. The friend unfolds as a poignant journey through grief, offering a window into how unexpected connections can lead to healing and self-discovery. The film opens with Iris contemplating Walter's suicide, wondering if he ever considered what would happen to his dog. This question becomes central to her processing of grief. What will happen to the dog? We're introduced to Walter through flashbacks at a dinner party where he enthusiastically recounts finding Apollo magically appearing between two bridges, silhouetted against what he poetically calls the limpid sky. The scene establishes Walter as a charismatic writer and storyteller, surrounded by friends who both admire and gently mock his dramatic flair. After Walter's death, we see the aftermath at his memorial service. His widow Barbara speaks about how his students and colleagues meant almost as much to him as his writing. The memorial brings together various people from Walter's life, including his first wife Elaine and his daughter Val. There's tension and awkwardness as these women navigate their relationships in Walter's absence. Elaine refers to herself and Iris as surviving divorced wives, noting with some bitterness that there can only be one widow. This gathering reveals the complicated web of relationships Walter left behind. Iris is also working on a book of Walter's correspondence alongside Val, who is revealed to be Walter's daughter. This professional commitment keeps Walter present in Iris's life, even as she struggles to process his absence. The book project becomes both a tether to Walter and a source of tension, particularly as Val reveals that Walter had concerns about Iris's slow pace of work. The heart of the story truly begins when Barbara asks Iris to take Apollo. Barbara claims this was Walter's contingency plan, that should anything happen to him, Apollo would go to Iris. She explains that the dog is miserable with her, waiting by the door day and night as if expecting Walter to return. Iris initially resists, pointing out that dogs aren't allowed in her building and that she's more of a cat person. Nevertheless, she reluctantly agrees to take Apollo temporarily. Apollo's arrival completely disrupts Iris's carefully maintained life. The Great Dane takes over her bed, destroys her pillows, including pages of her manuscript, and refuses to eat. He's clearly grieving for Walter, just as Iris is. Their early days together are awkward and strained. Apollo whines at night, refuses to use the elevator, and generally behaves like a creature who has lost his North Star. Iris, meanwhile, faces practical challenges like sneaking Apollo past her building's superintendent and finding places where Apollo is welcome. As days pass, Iris and Apollo begin to form a tentative bond. She discovers that Apollo loves being read to, possibly because Walter used to read to him. This small connection creates a bridge between them. Val helps by reading to Apollo from Walter's writings, and gradually the dog begins to eat again and engage with his new reality. The relationship between Iris and Apollo is complicated by an eviction notice from her building management. Dogs aren't allowed, and despite Iris's attempts to find Apollo another home, including a trial stay with Tuesday, who knew Walter, she increasingly realizes she doesn't want to part with him. Apollo has become important to her, a living connection to Walter and a companion in grief. Through conversations with others who knew Walter, especially Elaine, Iris begins to process her complicated feelings about her friend. She learns that Elaine knew about her brief romantic history with Walter years ago, something Iris had kept private. This revelation opens a door for Iris to be more honest about her complex relationship with Walter. They had a brief affair when she was a student, which then evolved into a deep, decades-long friendship that was central to both their lives. The film explores Iris's creative struggles as well. She hasn't written much since before taking on Walter's correspondence project. In a telling scene, she discovers Apollo has destroyed pages of her abandoned novel Eastern Bloc, which Walter had also disliked. This destruction symbolizes how Apollo is forcing Iris to confront both her creative block and her unresolved feelings about Walter. In a pivotal sequence, Iris sees a therapist, Dr. Warren, ostensibly to get documentation that would allow her to keep Apollo as an emotional support animal. This session becomes a breakthrough moment as she finally expresses her anger about Walter's suicide, not just sadness, but rage at the selfishness of his choice and how it affected everyone who loved him, including Apollo. During this therapy session, Iris imagines a conversation with Walter where she confronts him directly. She accuses him of selfishness and lack of consideration, particularly for leaving Apollo alone in the house with his body. Walter defensively responds, "In my defense, I was suicidal," highlighting the impossible nature of judging someone's actions when they're in such despair. This imagined conversation allows Iris to express her anger and move toward acceptance. The therapy session also leads Iris to consider writing about her experience, not just editing Walter's words but creating something new from her own perspective. This marks a turning point in her creative life, suggesting a path forward through her grief. Through persistence and some legal maneuvering regarding emotional support animals, Iris manages to secure permission to keep Apollo in her apartment. The superintendent Hector delivers the good news, and their celebration marks a moment of relief and joy in a story otherwise weighted with grief. As Iris and Apollo settle into life together, she begins to wonder about his history before Walter. Who was he as a puppy? Where did he come from? These questions parallel her feelings about Walter, the desire to know everything about someone you love, including the parts of their life you weren't present for. This curiosity shows how fully she has embraced Apollo as her companion. The final act of the film reveals that Val has arranged for Iris and Apollo to move to her family's beach house, which is being sold but is available until the end of May. This gives them one more summer together, a gift of time and space away from the constraints of city life. At the beach, Apollo can wander freely, and Iris has room to write. She begins to work on a new project, suggesting her creative revival. In these closing scenes, Iris reflects on the unfairness of dogs' short lifespans compared to humans. She wishes Apollo could live as long as she does, knowing their time together will be limited. When Apollo momentarily disappears on the beach, her panic reveals how important he has become to her. Finding him safe becomes a moment of pure joy and relief. The film ends with Iris and Apollo on the beach, dancing to Manhattan, embracing their time together however long it might be. This final scene embodies acceptance of loss, of unexpected joy, and of the unpredictable nature of love and connection. Through Apollo, Iris has found a way to process her grief for Walter and reconnect with her own creative voice. Throughout The Friend, the relationship between Iris and Apollo serves as a metaphor for grief itself, unwanted, disruptive, yet ultimately transformative. Apollo forces Iris out of her isolation, making her interact with neighbors, building management, dog parks, and veterinarians. He disrupts her carefully ordered existence but brings a new kind of joy and connection to her life. The film delicately navigates the complicated feelings surrounding suicide. We see characters struggling with anger, guilt, and confusion about Walter's choice. There's no simple explanation offered, just as there rarely is in real life. Instead, the film focuses on how those left behind must find ways to continue living. Walter's absence is a void that can't be filled, but new connections can be formed around that void. Walter himself remains somewhat enigmatic, shown mainly through others' memories and reactions. He was clearly charismatic and talented but also selfish and complicated. His relationships with multiple women, including his wives and Iris, suggest a pattern of connection and disconnection. His daughter Val represents an attempt at reconciliation, as he brought her into his professional life by having her work with Iris on his correspondence. Apollo's grief parallels human grief in many ways. He waits by doors, doesn't eat, and seeks comfort in familiar objects and routines. His behavior validates the depth of animal emotions while also providing a mirror for Iris's own grieving process. Unlike humans, Apollo can't rationalize or contextualize his loss. He simply feels it and responds with pure emotion. This directness becomes a guide for Iris's own healing. The film also touches on the complex dynamics of literary legacy. Walter was concerned about how he would be remembered, hence the Book of Correspondence. Iris, as his editor and friend, bears the responsibility of shaping that legacy. Yet, as she processes her grief, she begins to consider creating her own narrative about Walter rather than simply curating his words. This shift represents her reclaiming her own voice as a writer and as someone who has her own story to tell about their relationship. Class and privilege subtly underpin the narrative. Walter and his social circle are successful writers and academics, able to afford brownstones in Brooklyn and beach houses. Iris lives in a rent-controlled apartment that was once her father's. The preservation of this apartment becomes crucial not just for emotional reasons but practical ones. She will never find another place she can afford. This economic reality adds stakes to her fight to keep Apollo beyond just emotional attachment. The film explores different types of love without necessarily labeling them. Iris insists she wasn't in love with Walter in a romantic sense, yet their connection was profound and central to both their lives. Her relationship with Apollo develops from reluctant caretaking to deep attachment. These bonds defy simple categorization but represent the various ways humans connect with others, both human and animal. Particularly poignant is the parallel between Apollo and Iris's father. Both faced illness with dignity, fought to live, and loved those around them. This contrasts sharply with Walter's choice to end his life. Through caring for Apollo in his aging years, Iris perhaps finds a way to honor her father's memory while also processing her complicated feelings about Walter's suicide. The beach house represents a kind of grace, an unexpected gift of time and space. It allows Iris and Apollo to escape the constraints of city life and find a place where both can thrive. The open space matches Apollo's size and energy, while giving Iris room to breathe and create. It's both a literal and figurative opening up after the confinement of grief. By the end of the film, Iris has moved from seeing Apollo as Walter's dog that she's temporarily caring for to her companion, her friend. This shift represents her acceptance of her new reality, one without Walter but with new and meaningful connections. She no longer sees Apollo as a burden or a reminder of loss but as a gift, a living being with whom she can share love and joy. The friend ultimately suggests that healing from loss doesn't mean forgetting or replacing what's been lost. Rather, it means finding new connections that acknowledge the void while creating space for joy. Apollo doesn't replace Walter in Iris's life, and nothing could, but he offers a different kind of companionship that helps her move forward. The film ends not with complete resolution but with a moment of joy amidst ongoing grief. Iris and Apollo dancing on the beach acknowledges that life continues, that pleasure is still possible, even as time remains limited. It's a celebration of the present moment, embracing what is rather than dwelling on what was lost or fearing what might come. Through its exploration of grief, companionship, and creativity, The Friend offers a nuanced portrait of how we survive loss. It suggests that sometimes healing comes in unexpected forms, like a massive, bed-hogging Great Dane who refuses to eat anything but refuses to leave your side. In Apollo's steadfast presence, Iris finds not just a companion but a way forward, a reason to engage with the world again, and ultimately, a reflection of her own capacity for loyalty, love, and resilience. As the credits roll on Iris and Apollo dancing on the beach, we're left with the understanding that grief is not something to be overcome but rather integrated into a life that continues to unfold in surprising ways. Their dance celebrates not just survival but the discovery of joy in the midst of loss, the unexpected friendship that grew between a solitary writer and her friend's beloved dog, and the healing power of connection, both to others and to our own creative voices.